Everyone, welcome to Cinema Safari. Today we are talking about Five Nights at Freddy's 2. It's the sequel to 2023's film based on the popular video game franchise, loosely based off of the second game in the video game franchise. We see Josh Hutcherson and Elizabeth Lail reprising their roles in the main roles from the first film alongside several other actors reprising their roles, as well as some new additions to the cast as well. So get ready, keep your eye out as we enter Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and talk about Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So Five Nights at Freddy's 2, directed by Emma Tammy, written by Scott Calton. We see Josh Hutcherson, Elizabeth Lail in the two leading roles as Mike Schmidt and Vanessa Shelley, respectively. Of course, Mike Schmidt was a former security guard at the pizza place. Elizabeth Lail's character is a police officer in the area. We're joined by Piper Rubio as Abby Schmidt, who played Mike's younger sister in the first film and reprised the role in this film. And in the first film, she got a really close connection with the animatronics at the pizza shop, and ultimately certain things happened, and that's explored more in this film. Matthew Lillard also reprises his role as William Afton, a serial killer, and Vanessa Shelley's father. In the first film, certain events happened. We figure out that he is the main antagonist. He did ultimately put bodies into the animatronics, and that's why they were possessed. And so that's stuff like that is explored more in this film. Also, in the first film, he was trapped and crushed by his own mechanical spring lock from his animatronic that he wore in the film. So his character does return in this film. Different aspects of the film that we see him in, but it's good to see him return. Matthew Lillard, great actor, always loved him. So that's a fun time. We also see Matthew Patrick, who had a cameo in the first film as a waiter in the diner. He returns in this film to voice a character. So he does return, just fun to see. Skeet Ulrich and McKenna Grace, along with Megan Fox, appear in the film as well, joining the cast. So it has a fun cast. They're exciting. Fun time. It was directed by Emma Tammy, written by Scott Calton. It's loosely based off the second video game in the video game series. I haven't played the video game, so I'm not too sure how close it is to the game, like plot-wise, or how how much might be different converting it into a movie, stuff like that. So it's a year after the first film, follows Abby Schmidt as she reconnects with the animatronics from the pizza place, leading to events that reveal the origins of the pizza shop and how it all came to be, which was explored a little in the first film, especially with animatronics and how those stories, campfire stories, came to be and how they kind of became possessed. But this one explores more about just the overall aspect of how it came to be, stuff like that. It definitely explores a lot more mythos in this film, a lot more of the story into origins, stuff like that. More than we got in the first film. The initial reception to the second film, definitely, critic-wise, it's a lot more negative. Some people do say that it is an improvement from the first film, at least in some aspects. It does have a lot more horror elements and that kind of thing than the first film. So some people are actually saying that if you're not a horror fan, or if you don't really have any experience with horror genre, it's a good horror film to kind of help you dip your feet into the genre and become kind of familiar and kind of give yourself a little experience with the genre. It's a good film for that. People are saying, so it's definitely easy film like as a stepping stone to get into horror, to kind of experience the genre, see if it's for you or not. A lot of people did have issues with like the pacing of the film, a lacking character development, stuff like that. They did say like a lot of people are saying that the production like design on this film, the visuals compared to the first film of like certain characters, animatronics, definitely an improvement over the first film. Did have a slightly larger budget, so that might also affect attribute to the production design and some of the visuals that were used for the second film. So it definitely did have a more of a mixed response than the first film. In a lot of areas, some positives, some negatives. I believe it did debut to like a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes compared to the first one that had like a 33%. But it is expected to have a decent run at the box office. The first film did as well. So it definitely has a strong fan base. So I think it'll end up doing fine, and they'll continue moving forward with other projects that they are planning to develop for the franchise, such as a third film that they are currently developing, which ultimately will be based upon the success that this film ultimately has at the box office after its run. But they do have a third film that they are planning for, I believe, 2027. And they are also developing new games as well for the franchise that they're talking about. I don't know if there's a timeline for that. But there are definitely things in the work to continue to expand the franchise within the next few years, which is exciting. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with the franchise overall, especially with video games. I have watched both of the movies, obviously. I'm not sure how closely they are based on the video games. I know there's definitely certain aspects from the games that are used in the films. But after watching the films, like I'm not, like I've said in previous episodes on different horror movies, I'm not a huge horror fan. So especially video games, I tend to stay away from horror games. Movies, I'm not much of a horror fan, but I have the past few years, especially working at a movie theater, getting to see movies as much as I can. I do try to watch pretty much every movie that show. So I definitely try to expose myself to genres that I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to watch, like in the past, or even like if it's on TV or like a streaming service stuff I wouldn't necessarily watch. I do kind of push myself to watch more in the theater because one, it's the theater, and I want to see it in that aspect that it was intended to made for, but also just to open my eyes to different genres, especially as an actor, to explore that. But there were definitely a lot of positives in the movie that I saw. Not being too familiar with the mythos of the movie, there's a lot in the movie that I think you would kind of need to be at least somewhat familiar with the franchise and the games to kind of understand certain aspects of it. Not to say that you won't necessarily understand it, but you'll have an easier time knowing certain things that occur, because it is definitely a lot heavier mythos based, based off like past events and connecting with like the games than the first film had. So it'll definitely help you if you have at least somewhat of familiarity with the franchise. But even if you don't, like, it's still as a horror film, it's not like the scariest movie ever made, but there's definitely certain aspects that I think will be enjoyable for horror fans. Character wise, like I said, not great character development, especially for like the returning characters from the first film. Even them, just that wasn't really there. Story wise, was okay, nothing special. So I think the positives fall more with like the production design, the visuals of the film, more than like the story and the characters. Um, Certain characters like had they performed well, but like the writing I think just wasn't great for them, and they just weren't really developed too well for this film. But it was fun to see them. They had good performances. Overall, there were positives and negatives to this film. I don't know if it's like a super positive direction going forward in the franchise from the first film per se. Um, like story wise, we definitely it definitely helps expand the universe as far as the movies are concerned, um, and we get more information on like the origins of uh, the pizza place and that kind of thing. So it definitely does expand certain things story wise, I guess. But overall, just looking at the film overall, I don't know if it's in a super positive direction for the franchise. So hopefully, it does have a strong fan base. So I don't think, based on like the negative aspects of the film, it'll affect like the performance too much because there is still a strong fan base, especially having certain actors in the film that people enjoy. And Five Nights, just in general, has a pretty strong fan base over the years. So I think it'll do fine. And I think that third film and future projects for the franchise to grow the franchise in the next few years will still happen. So it'll be interesting to see what they shape future projects into. I'm assuming I don't know how many video games in total there are in the franchise, but I'm assuming the third film would probably uh, focus a lot of elements on the third game. But it'll be interesting to see how it connects to this film as well as maybe the first film. So it'll just be interesting to see what they decide to do going down the road in the next few years to continue building the franchise. And hopefully, we'll get to see some more character development in a more positive light, a stronger story overall compared to this film for like a more generalized audience. This definitely was a film that overall it can be definitely enjoyable for like a general audience, but if you're not like a fan or somewhat familiar with the franchise, it's definitely there's definitely a lot in the film that you might not understand as well. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of that. So with that, we are going to wrap up today's episode. So Five Nights at Freddy's 2, definitely not the best film of the year, but like it definitely had some stuff going for it. For me personally, I think it had more of a mixed response for me than the first film. I didn't personally love the first film. I thought it was, it had its moments. I'm not a huge fan. I don't know the franchise well enough to really, give my like overall opinion, like really critiquing it because I'm not too familiar with any of it. But the first film overall, I think it was there were a lot of interesting concepts in it. This film having it deal with like more mythos from the games and stuff like that, there was a lot of it I didn't necessarily understand as well as maybe some other people who are a little more familiar with it, just based off that. So that might have also hindered my experience with the overall film. It definitely did have its positive moments compared to the negative moments. It definitely was more mixed than the first film for me personally. So there's that. I'm interested to see where they continue going forward because I feel like it definitely will continue the franchise with a potential third film and maybe some other things as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the film. If you enjoyed this film, how it compares to the first film for you. If you're a fan of the franchise, like what are your thoughts? Like how close was it to the games? Did they do it justice? Stuff like that. So comment on this film, like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. We're also on Spotify. And we're on Instagram, Twitter, or X, I guess we'd say. Do that every time. And thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. And I will see you all next time.